All right, so first quarter, we're going to cover some news from the NCAA women's basketball and how some top potential picks in the WNBA draft are opting out of entering the WNBA draft and returning for their final seasons of eligibility, and just what the implications are and if this is a good or bad decision. We'll cover that. That's going to be the first quarter. Second quarter, this story is very interesting. We're covering the second quarter. So the Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James situation, it just was a lot of things regarding it. And there's a reporter who dug a little bit deeper into the Stephen A. Smith, LeBron James call out, where Stephen A. Smith was saying that LeBron James was not in attendance for Kobe Bryant's funeral. So it's a couple minute video. We're gonna go over it, and then I'm just gonna give my points on what I think about this person digging into this deeper, and if I believe this is crossing the line of going too far into the personal lives of athletes. That's gonna be the second quarter. Third quarter, Mel Kiper, he did a episode maybe 3 weeks to a month ago, and this topic I've been meaning to cover. As we get closer to the draft, I'm really going to cover it now, just because it's the potential of he kind of he goes back all the way to 1970, and he rates it from 1970, I believe, to 1993, and then 1994, I believe, to 2024. And he goes over, based on when you're drafted, if you were ever able to lead your team to at least the playoffs, just to play in a game, not even win the game, just so if you were able to lead your team to a playoff um, invite, I guess you would call it, to even be eligible to play in the playoffs. So this is something that's strictly stats. So I really like this breakdown because this is not really something you can argue with. I think some people are going to be alarmed at how the numbers break down. I don't think you should go 100% on the numbers, but I think you should go based on when making a decision on when to draft a quarterback. You should go based on that quarterback's potential, what you've seen from tape on that quarterback after you spent time in the pre-draft process with that quarterback, and then you also should kind of look at the numbers and then make the decision using all those different variables and all those different factors. So we're going to cover that in the third quarter, and then in the fourth quarter, this is the big one, where I believe that Browns fans, if you just look at any coverage of the Browns or anything with the draft, so if you look on X, if you look on YouTube, you look on TikTok, you look at the comments, you look at how people are having the conversations around what the Browns should do, and I believe a lot of these conversations are based around fear of messing up versus the opportunity for upside when making a sound decision. And I think that's something that has to be weighed. And then also there's a second layer to the fourth quarter where Shador Sanders just had his pro day at Colorado. We're going to go into some of the coverage of that. And then we're going to go back to the last time that the Browns were picking a quarterback early in the draft. And that would be when we selected Baker Mayfield number 1 overall. Now, let me go to the post. I was responding to another post on X, but basically ESPN Cleveland, they put this story up, and they said that there is growing belief that Travis Hunter will be the favorite to be selected number 2 by the Cleveland Browns. And my response was, the last time the Browns picked this high, no one had a clue who we were taking. I don't believe any of these growing belief stories. If it was Carter, it was Carter the last 3 weeks, now it's Hunter. These stories are to keep you entertained. And that was my response. And then a couple of responses I got back from people. One was, Hunter is a Brown bro. So I replied, my guess is Cam goes 1, Shador 2, Travis goes 3. Somebody else said, go back and look at the Baker year. It was the same thing with, they were basically saying that it was tightly wrapped on who we were selecting. And I disagree with that. I believe that it was a number of players who we had the potential to draft, and people weren't really sure. And we'll go over some of the reasons why, and I even pulled the clips, because I think sometimes we kind of take an idea that we have, and then years go by, and then we kind of just kind of mash it all together and then you will believe, okay, this is what happened. But then there's finer details and points that you could miss if you don't go back and revisit that information. So this was my response to that. I said, remember, Baker also had off the field things to answer too. I had the clips of Baker's pre-draft interviews, and I told him I'll be going live. And he said, someone else replied, last time the Browns picked high, we were very high on Sam Darnold. And there is another response. Let's see if I can find. So this was like a hot thing that a lot of people were responding to. All right, so this is someone else responding to me. And then a few weeks, our reports started dropping about Baker. This goes right in line with how that draft went. Sanders, all offseason, closer to draft Carter, weeks before Hunter. If you don't remember, it was Sam and Rosen, then Josh Allen. Reports were creeping around, then Baker. And somebody else says, I was there, bruh. It was either Sam or Bake. Rosen wasn't getting any traction. Josh was such a gamble, and Browns fans knew we would F up his development. That would be Josh Allen. And then I'm just telling them, hey, I do a live sports show Saturdays at 7 p.m. I'll put the clips to the media congratulating Dorsey on how everyone was in the dark on who the Browns were picking. I agree there was speculation, but nothing certain like some number one overall picks. And I said, there are 4 names I'm seeing in these replies. That alone makes my point. Example, Caleb last year. No one expected anyone else to go number 1 overall. So that was my point. My point was they responded and they wanted me to believe that there was a consensus that was early. And I disagree with that point. And just based on the anecdotal evidence of the 4 people that responded to me, they gave 4 different answers of how things went. That just proves the point that it wasn't consensus. When Burrow was coming out, Browns tried to trade with Cincinnati to get the number 1 overall pick. They refused it, and they were taking Burrow, and everybody knew Burrow was going 1. Last year with Caleb, everybody knew Caleb was going number 1. It was nothing you can trade up to get that number 1 pick from Chicago. They were taking Caleb Williams. That is a consensus pick. A consensus pick is actually a consensus pick this year for the number 1 overall pick. The tea leaves are out there. That's going to be Cam Ward that goes number 1 overall. There is not a consensus pick for who the Browns will take at number 2. And that's the point of this. Like, I know that Browns fans like to knock the Browns for saying they don't do a lot of things well, but there are some things that they handle well and people just don't give them credit for. And we'll talk about that later on in the 4th quarter. All right, so that was the long open, but let's get to it.